For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh, and today I am joined by the writer-director of the documentary I Know Catherine, the Log Lady, Mr. Richard Green. How are you doing?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
I think one of the things that I'm always so curious about asking documentary filmmakers, because I don't get a chance to sit down with them very often, is what was it particularly about Catherine Coulson or Twin Peaks or any of the multitude of projects she worked on, whether that was behind the camera, in front of the camera, or even on stage? What was it about her story that kind of sparked the inspiration for this documentary?
Ooh, good question. Catherine was just an extraordinary person, and extraordinary people tend to attract other extraordinary people. It's not an accident that David Lynch is one of his best friends in the world is Catherine Coulson, nor vice versa. And if you look at the other people that are in the documentary, people like Lisa Loomer, who just wrote the book for Real Women Have Curves on Broadway, Robert Schenken, Pulitzer Prize winner for Kentucky Cycle, and the actors, the directors, Mark Frost, all of these people who came together for the film, they're extraordinary people in their own right. And I met Catherine, I was 20 years old. She was 26, 27, as was David. Jack was a little older. And we spent a summer hanging out because I was doing a show in LA and they were shooting Eraserhead. And, you could just being around them, it was wonderful. There's a wonderful trio of people, wacky and certainly. So, I sort of followed her career and David's career and my own and all my own group of extraordinary people. When Catherine passed in 2015, I got a call from Donna Dubain, who's our executive producer and in the film, that she got a call from another one of their friends who was in the house with Catherine for those last few weeks. And they all had to sign a $6 million penalty NDA. If they talked about this, they were going to get fined $6 million. All the people that were in the house that were there when they shot that. But it didn't matter. Friends call friends. Donna called me and told me this extraordinary story about her shooting this scene in her living room 4 days before she died of the same disease as the character. That just got me. It just became fascinating for me. And I thought it would make an excellent documentary. And the more I found out about it, the more convinced I was. The first real interview I did was with David Lynch. And I mean, David is an extraordinarily interesting person anyway, or was, still is, I guess. And the interview was as intimate as his direction of me in Mulholland Drive. We collaborated on that intuitively. He gave me a script. I rewrote the script in 3 languages, which is what he wanted. And he got it and we did it. And it was so personal. It was like performing and then having somebody just get every bit of it. It was an amazing feeling. And when I interviewed him, I had the same experience, except this time I was listening to him. I was giving him stuff and he was bringing it out and he let it go, man. There's so much more to this interview than what's in the movie just because of time constraints. But yeah, he was right there. And those are the things that really got me. And then everybody I talked to just furthered that experience of how special she was and how it was all about, in all those relationships, it's all about life. These are really smart, really creative people. And what are they talking about? They're talking about their everyday experiences of love and loss. And, it was beautiful experience for me.
You mentioned something that with the Lynchian interview that talks about the time restraints, obviously with this being under a little just shy of 2 hours, I'm imagining hundreds of thousands of hours that you guys shot interviews for, stories that you heard for this documentary. One of the questions I'm kind of curious about is how, as a filmmaker, do you decide what to put into the film, what to cut from the film? What's the process for you in that?
Good question as well. It's got to be personal. Everybody's got an opinion, and everybody's opinion is valid for them, right? But you have to make these choices based on what you feel and what you're relating to. I always figure that I may be unusual and unique in the way I live my life and some of the things that I do, but I'm just like everybody else. So if something warms my heart, it's likely to warm most people's hearts. And if it makes me laugh, so I trust my own instinct on that. But the process was enormously time consuming to do it properly. One of the things that I knew when I started is that I didn't want to make it about Twin Peaks. I wanted to make it about Catherine, and the Twin Peaks was a really important part of that. And when I interviewed David, that's what he wanted as well. We both were on the same page, that we thought Catherine's life and her relationships were extraordinary, and Twin Peaks was an aspect of that and would attract a large audience, but which would be satisfied with almost whatever we gave them. We have over 100 hours of interviews. I did 60-something interviews, and all of them were over an hour, because my interest in the interview was in digging into, like with Kyle MacLachlan. I didn't know anything about him other than he was a wonderful actor that I enjoyed in a couple of shows. And doing some research really wasn't enough. I wanted to know what formed him, what his perspective of life was, so that when he started talking about Catherine, I would have a context. And I think the result of that is that people feel like you're hearing them, and that you know them. So when they answer a question, they don't have to fill in all these things. They can go to the thing that's interesting to them, the thing that's tweaking them, because they feel like you're with them. And I think it was very, very, it was a reductive process, if you will. We shot these 60 interviews. I didn't look at any of the season 3 of Twin Peaks until after I'd shot all the interviews, because I didn't want to be too over-influenced in how I had questioned people and stuff. I wanted to find out her full life. Once I shot the interviews, I went back to each interview, took out all the questions, because I was not going to have a narrator and questions in this. So I wanted just to be working with the information that I had. So if somebody said something, I had that piece of data, that information that I could use. Then I went through all of the Twin Peaks, and I selected all the pieces that I thought might be relevant to the film. Then I went back to the interviews, and I took each interview. And at first I created like 29 steps of her life, and then a bunch of sort of thematic ideas that I thought were there as well. Then I went through each of the 60-something interviews, and if somebody said something about, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, it went into the Oregon sequence. And if somebody said something about her breasts, it went into the breasts sequence. So at the end of that process, which was a couple of years in, because it took 2 years to get all the interviews, I had now this enormous amount of material. I had 49 sequences that were all specific subjects. Then I would go back to each sequence, like Disneyland was a sequence, right? Because she grew up in Disneyland. And I would see what everybody said. Now I've got 30, 40, 50 people talking about Disneyland. What are they saying? Where is the story? How do I do it? And it all became this sort of reductive, get rid of, take something and leave things behind, keep putting them together. And just that you just keep going through it. You ask your friends to watch. But it's your gut, you have to trust your own gut, or you shouldn't be in this business, I think.
One of the things that I find really fascinating about the format of this documentary is that there are 2 timelines that run slowly merge into one another. Yeah. And I don't want to, there is this like almost nexus point. I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen this movie yet, but where in the process for you did the idea come to do kind of the beginning of her, like, I guess career, not quite, because it starts with a lot more of like her theater work, and then it kind of goes into the Twin Peaks: The Return, and it kind of just, it feels like 2 trains just kind of meeting in the night. Can you kind of talk about the process of creating those 2 timelines, but running parallel with one another?
Yeah. Yes, I can. But before I do, I would just like to say it's a pleasure for me as a filmmaker when I get to talk to somebody who sees the structure and who sees how it's working, because it's, it's very delicate stuff. I went through this process. I went through all those things. And then once I had those 49 sequences sort of cut as stories, then I had to put together the linear timeline. Nobody knew Catherine's whole story. Even her closest friends didn't know this part, didn't know that part. So the first thing was to put together a linear, just narrative, no illustrations, no photographs, nothing. Just what people said and how it played out from one end of her life to the other. And once we did that, I had to make a big decision. Do I cut this as a 3-part miniseries? This was the end of COVID, or during COVID, I made this decision. Do I cut it as a 3-part miniseries, which were very popular at the time and would really allow me to show Kath the breadth of her life, the depth of how these things worked? Or do I try and cut it as a feature? And I made the decision to cut the 3-part miniseries first, and because I could always cut a feature from the miniseries. I could always reduce it further, but to expand it would never be a process that would make sense. So we cut a linear 3-part miniseries. The first cut was 6.5 hours. The cut that we started showing people, that we illustrated, was 3.5 hours, 3 parts. Once we did that, that's the first thing that David watched, and he just fell in love with it. And I think if he had his druthers, that would have been what we released. But we couldn't find easy release methodology for it, with the changing dynamic of the streamers, the changing dynamic of nonfiction and documentary. It all became evident to me that to reach our audience, the wider audience, which is what we wanted. I never wanted this to be for Twin Peaks fans. I knew, because I know so many of them now, I knew that Twin Peaks fans would love the movie if it was an honest portrayal of Catherine. Whatever we gave them would be great. But could we go beyond Twin Peaks and reach to people who were interested in life and didn't know anything about Twin Peaks or Star Trek or any of the rest of it? So once we had the 3-part miniseries and we were not getting the response we wanted quickly, I'm not real connected to Hollywood, but David was, and we were not finding the deals we wanted. It's not an inexpensive movie. I cut a trailer for a show in Chicago. They did a retrospective at the Music Box, Ryan, at the Music Box in Chicago, which is a great independent film theater. And Ryan Ostrich brought us out, and I cut a trailer for them. And the trailer is what told me how to cut the feature. The trailer gave me the sense of, oh, wait a minute. The strongest thing we have is the timeline, the current day timeline, from the day David announces, weeks later she finds out her illness, till they shoot it and she passes. That's a timeline, right? And that if it's strong enough and interesting enough, and the beats are big enough, that I could hang the past on it. And that became the structure. The structure is what happens from the announcement until the passing, and how much of her past can we get in so we can set up the relationships which play out throughout her life. And I think that's one of the reasons it works so well, is that there's elements that start in her beginning of her life or middle of her life and then come back and resolve at the end. And that, for us as an audience, I think is pretty satisfying.
And we do live in a day and age where director's cuts are a thing. They are reality. Sometimes they exist solely on physical media. But I'm kind of curious, with this initially being a 3.5 hour cut. I mean, there's 90 minutes of this movie that I have not seen. Right. So I'm very kind of curious if that cut does exist, if you guys do kind of, if this movie gets a good response, is that a plan that is further down the line?
It would make me very, very happy. We purchased from Showtime, CBS, and MK2 in Paris and other places. We purchased the footage that's in the film, and all of the Twin Peaks stuff, all of the Eraserhead stuff, everything that we've purchased fills out the 3-part. We purchased based on the 3-part, knowing that one day we hope to release the 3-part miniseries. I hope it's not that far in the distance, but we feel that we've got, with this film, something that a general audience can relate to. I mean, I've seen it now 20 times, more than that, with real audiences, full houses, and it blows me away. They get everything. It's like they're laughing at jokes I forgot we made, and crying in moments that, oh my God, I didn't know it. The audience is teaching me how to watch my film. It's a beautiful experience. I mean, for a filmmaker, you can't give me a couple $100 million and an Academy Award, that'd top it. But at the moment, I spent 8 years making a movie that hits where it needs to hit, that moving people, that David loved. And, that's pretty satisfying.
I came into this movie as a Twin Peaks fan, and I know you've said it several times that this is a movie that was not intentionally made for Twin Peaks fans. And there was so much of Catherine's story that I fell in love with. I didn't know that she had any background in the technical work behind the scenes. It thrilled my theater kid heart to know that she spent so many times on the theater. And theater is such a big portion in this story that I mean, I know again, Twin Peaks is what's gonna be bringing people in, but how much of that stories that we don't kind of see is the time that she spends in the theater? Because I mean, that was such a huge bulk of the end of her life.
You mean in the 3-part? How much of it is there?
Yeah,
Much more. There's a lot more theater in it, because there was 22 years, 20 seasons at OSF, and the other aspects of it. I'm a theater kid, and we know each other, me and Catherine, because the theater company Circus broke up. I moved to San Francisco at 18, and at 19, I started a theater company with 2 of the people from the Circus, and then all of a sudden, Circus became my theater company. It was like, family. And I know friends of mine, from high school and college, they formed great friendships, and there are people that I'm aware of that have friendships from high school that are seriously close still to this day. Likewise from college. The relationships that I formed that have lasted my lifetime thus far are from theater, and are from the days in San Francisco when we put together Theater of Marvels, which is the company that grew out of Circus. It's a great, important, rarefied at this point art form, but I think it's really important. Catherine did 80 roles in 22 seasons. We had access to every one of those plays on videotape.
That's amazing.
Every one of those plays. And there's more theater. There's Cat on a Hot Tin Roof appears in the 3-part. There's a couple of other plays that are excerpted. So there's a lot. And we're currently just looking to do a big theater outreach. We have a program. I don't know if I should get into this with you, but how we're marketing this when we go online. Should I address that with you? Would you?
Sure, go for it. Yeah, 100%.
We never actually thought of doing a theatrical release. We didn't think it was available to us. And really, what happened is we were just getting ready to announce our digital release, and David passed, and we were asked to do a theater piece, and then somebody else said that the film is good enough. You should really apply, to be qualified for an Academy Award. And I went, "What are you talking? Academy Award? Wait a minute. But there's a couple of good songs in it, and it doesn't cost anything to apply for Academy Awards. You just have to qualify by doing a solid week run in one of 5 or 6 cities. And so we're starting that tomorrow. We're doing our Academy qualifying week tomorrow.
That's awesome.
But our digital strategy is 2 parts. It's 1 part, but 2 aspects of it. We want to go to our 1,752 backers and say to them, look, we're going to release this film. It's going to be streaming and download on our site. Nobody has to sign up. You just go. If you want to watch it, you buy it, and you have it. $20 to stream it or download it. But if you are one of our backers, 1,752 people, we will give you a partner code. And if you send the email out and you send it to all your friends and family, many of whom don't understand why the hell you love Twin Peaks, this film won't explain Twin Peaks, but it might explain what you find in it, where the values are in it. If any of your friends use your code, they get a $5 discount, and you get $5 sent back to you or the charity of your choice. This is kind of unusual. So once we thought of that we have potential 1,752 people marketing to their email list. This could be really good, right? And I thought there are 6,000 community theaters in the United States. Most of those don't have professional fundraisers, but they all have email lists. So we decided we're going to offer our partner code to every independent theater in the country. So we may end up with a couple of thousand doing the same thing, sending it to their subscriber list. The subscribers get $5 which off the $20, which is a substantial discount. And then $5 goes directly back to the theater company to support it. This is, nobody's really tried it this way. This is what we're doing, but we've gotten a lot of support for the idea. And I like it because it means that you're incentivizing word of mouth. You're saying to people, if you love this movie, you want your friends to see it, they should benefit, and you should benefit.
Absolutely. One of the things that, first off, that's awesome. Just, I feel like that's definitely something that Catherine would like 100% support.
Oh, yeah.
That's really gnarly. One of the things that this is kind of winding down on the interview. One of the things that I think this film does really well that really surprises me is this film doesn't hold back any punches when it talks about some of her more vulnerable sides, whether it's been the rocky relationship that she had in her first marriage, some of the issues that she had in her second marriage, and some of the fears and anxieties she faced during her final season in Oklahoma. And I'm kind of curious, when you guys were setting out to make this documentary, I feel like so many times what we find either in documentaries or even in biopics, you have filmmakers that are looking to kind of create sometimes this sanitized version of the subject of a documentary or the biopic, and you guys just kind of really leaned in. Why was some of those details that are a little bit more heavier to watch in this film so important to the story of Catherine Coulson?
When we started the process, I didn't know the details. I didn't know how deep it would go. It seemed, but I knew that she was in a women's group, and there's this wonderful editor. Her name is Mikkel Goldman. I haven't seen her in 30 years. She lived down the street from me in Beechwood Canyon, right where Catherine and Jack used to live. And she was living with a guy I went to Cal Arts with, a wonderful actor named Norman Alexander Gibbs. If you ever saw the movie Airplane, there's a black man on Airplane that's the jive talking black guy. That's Norman Alexander Gibbs. And
Nice.
There was probably he's still alive, I believe. There's probably no cooler person I ever met in my life than Norman Alexander Gibbs. He just had a fundamental earthiness about him as a man, as a human, and a fine actor. So I called her because she was in that women's group with Catherine, and I wanted her to sit for an interview. And we had an interesting conversation. She was not open to sitting for an interview. And she warned me about making a hagiography, which I had never heard the word before. I may not even be pronouncing it right, but it is a puff piece of a biography where you sanitize and whitewash the person. And she said, don't do that. She was worried I was going to do that. And I had no desire to do that. So, I'll give you, if I can just switch the perspective. A few years ago, my younger brother came back. He'd been living in England for a while, and he got into an altercation on the street with somebody who was being rude to somebody, and he interceded, and he came back, and he was very proud of himself. He stood up for the rights, and he asked me if I thought that I was tough. And I thought about it for a second, and I said, yeah, I think I'm really tough. And I think I'm really tough because I'm tough enough to stay vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid to cry, and especially after working on this film for these years. I cry very easily now, too easily in some ways. But that's really the key. If you can't, there's a thing in the Tao Te Ching that talks about if you don't embrace death, you can't really enjoy life. You have to accept the full of it, right? Catherine's story is powerful, not because everything was great, but because it wasn't great all the time, and she made it great. She found it. You've seen the film, so you know that the intricacies, and I don't want to bore your audience with until they've seen it. But there's a moment in this film where Catherine gets emotionally hurt toward the end of the film with her final relationship. She gets really beat up, and more beat up than we talk about. I think that she really, lost her way for a while because of this pain. And it was her illness and again, this is just me speculating as a man. It's not even a conclusion in the film, but because of her illness, she came back to life. Because this challenge, it's like, okay, you can beat yourself up about this failure or be down about it, but now you got a challenge. How are you going to help your daughter who's not ready for you to die? How are you going to fulfill your obligations to David? How are you going to take this amazing character and give her, her curtain call, her final thing? So I never worried about a hagiography from the moment that I was warned, because I knew that the beauty of her life is that despite the difficulties that we all face, she found inspiration and motivation, and the gift of giving to other people sustained her.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What a great way to end the interview right there. The film once again is called "I Know Catherine, the Log Lady." As we've illustrated, this is a movie not just for Twin Peaks folks, but for theater geeks, for cinephiles, or for just a general audience. If you guys want to see a fascinating life, I recommend this documentary. You guys can check out our review on it as well. It's currently making its way around the U.S. and you guys can stream it on the website, correct?
Yes, they can actually pre-order the stream at
Okay.
iknowcatherine.com.
Okay.
And also we have the dates of places we're playing, and anybody would like to come and see us live. If I'm there, please say hello. And if I'm not, please enjoy the movie.
We'll provide links for you guys in the show notes below, as well as our review and our general thoughts on this as well. Once again, this is I Know Catherine, the Log Lady. Richard, thank you so much for your time. And please go continue to support independent film and stay classy.
Thank you. And I hope to get to talk to you.